Hi, I'm Jennifer Potter, Executive Director of Be Well Texas. Too many people are struggling alone these days, and alcohol and drug deaths are increasing. We started Be Well Texas to offer high-quality, science-based addiction treatment and recovery services anywhere, virtually or in person. In many cases, there is no cost for treatment or medications if you don't have insurance. Really. Welcome to Be Well Texas. We're glad you're here. Visit bewelltexas.org.
Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of the Alamodome podcast. Your host Jared Kalmus, rejoined after a brief hiatus by my co-host Adrian Bermudez. Adrian, it's good to have you back. Those solo pods are tough, man. Tough.
You do a great job on it, man. You sounded really, really well. But yes, I am happy to be back. Very, very glad to be back. Upset to miss a UNT preview pod with you, man. But even better.
It definitely would have been spicier with you there for sure.
It would have been spicy.
I'm all respectful, you know.
We've got plenty of spice still in the pocket to celebrate a recap win episode for UTSA. Now, 4 straight wins over the Mean Green in the last 3 years. Nothing short of rivalry domination in this series, Jared. It's just absolutely fantastic. This time with maybe the most impressive molly-whopping of the Mean Green, at least since the conference championship game that we beat them in 2 seasons ago. 48-27, the Roadrunners over the Mean Green on a Friday night on ESPN2 in the Alamodome. And that is on a school record 681 yards of total offense for UTSA. Absolutely insane. 467 of those yards coming from quarterback Owen McCown. Yes, sir. Owen McCown's 467 yards of offense was just 13 shy of UNT's total for the night.
Ooh, buddy.
480 yards for the Mean Green, 467 for Owen McCown. Yeah, boy, you better believe that bad man, Owen McCown.
How many North Texas fans spent their offseason telling themselves, "Oh, Frank Harris is finally gone. We're gonna have UTSA's number now. No Frank Harris there. We got it made." And then I'm willing to bet that Owen probably dropped more yards on them than Frank ever did. I'd have to go back and check that, but that's a pretty hefty number, you know?
It's a lot. It's a hell of an output. A hell of an output, man. Owen McCown was just absolutely phenomenal on the day. 29 for 43 for 379 yards passing. That is 8.8 yards per pass with 2 touchdowns. 8.8 yards per carry as well, with 10 carries for 88 yards on the ground. So 8.8 yards per touch for Owen McCown, essentially.
He took some sacks, right? If you adjust the sacks out a bit, he ran for 108. Now, granted, those sacks were mostly his fault, right? So I think it's fine to take some yards away from him for that. But he had a crazy game with his legs.
You know, aside from prior to Robert Henry getting an 83-yard, garbage time touchdown to kind of put in that final dagger, Owen McCown is UTSA's leading rusher of the day as well. So just an incredible output. He has been phenomenal all year long and just continues to get better week after week. There's just not enough that can be said about the job that Owen McCown is doing for UTSA's offense this year.
Yeah, seriously. I saw Javi posted some stuff from the record book, and Owen with probably 3 games left this season, he's already like number 2, number 3 on so many of the single season passing records for the Roadrunners, and he's only a sophomore. He does not have a great receiving core around him. He's got a patchwork offensive line in front of him. He's got no running game supporting him at all. He's been the leading rusher in 2 games, I think, almost a third last week. I mean, what he's been able to do is unreal. It's crazy to think there were people that were calling for him to be benched as recently as 3 weeks ago. It's just wild. But even though you and I have been pretty big Owen defenders for quite a while now, even seeing his praises going back to last year, it's pretty evident. You watch this guy compared to where he was at the beginning of the year, and you can see the growth, right? Like how quick he is to
Absolutely.
get the ball out, the reads he's making, the touch he's putting on some throws, the way he's like really stepping into those deep shots. That first quarter, he had two of the best throws he's had as a Roadrunner, and both of them were drops, right? Chris Carpenter
Yeah.
tripped on the Alamodome turf, and he dropped one. And I think the other one is Willie McCoy just kind of lost focus and let the ball glance off of him, as we've seen all too often from UTSA this year. So
Thinking about
crazy
what he was
game for
going to do after he
him.
caught it.
And then, also,
Yeah.
I mean, he looks faster out there than he did previously in the year. He was outrunning defenders, picking up a lot of yards. UNT was just really giving him space to run, and he said, "Don't mind if I do," right?
Yeah, and you see him, he doesn't have that hesitation to take off with his feet like he did earlier this year. When he sees the opening, he takes it. But also the decision making while running was incredible. He stayed in bounds when the clock needed to keep ticking. He got out of bounds whenever the clock needed to stop. He slid whenever he had the down and distance that he could afford himself to slide on a first or a second. But if it was third down, he was lowering that shoulder and taking that hit, getting that extra yard to move the chains. So really, really high awareness scrambling from Owen McCown. And that's not something that we had seen even just a month ago, Jared. Incredible stuff. It's his fourth 300-yard game of the year so far. This guy is a redshirt sophomore who only had one start prior to this season. He has only thrown interceptions in 3 of 10 games. And by the way, the single interception that he had against UNT was a dropped pass. It was bounced off of the hands of who was that dropped that?
I don't know.
I can't remember. It was one of our receivers. It popped off of his hands and it went into UNT interception.
Yeah,
but actually,
it was unlucky. It was unlucky, but it was a bad throw too. He should not have thrown it. I mean, if he would have put 2 extra inches of height on it, it would have been a massive gain for sure. But I think that one's fair to call like an interception on Owen on that one.
I would say it just Jeff Traylor said something in his post-game presser like, people talking bad about my offensive coordinator, y'all must not know football. So I echo that to every single Roadrunner fan that had anything negative to say about Owen McCown through the first 9 weeks of this season. Anyone that had anything bad to say about Owen's play through September and October, y'all must not know quarterbacking, because that dude has been a stud from week 1. How dare you? Owen McCown, dude.
I'm not in that. There's a UTSA Facebook group called Balls Deep UTSA Football.
Oh, gosh.
And I'm not in it. It's probably the first time we've ever mentioned it on the podcast of all the years we've been doing it, but it's been like the primary home for UTSA football discussion on Facebook forever, as far as I know. I do get sent screenshots from it pretty often, and it seems like there are still people that want to see Eddie Lee Marburger over Owen McCown, which is so mind-blowing to me. He's a stud, man. Absolutely.
He's a stud. He's just been great.
Another thing, another notch on his belt. He got a coach fired. UNT fired their defensive coordinator, Matt Capone. He was, at the time of his firing, the highest paid assistant coach in the group of 5.
Wow.
He was terrible. He was terrible for the Mean Green. UTSA put the final nail in his coffin with those 681 yards. That's one thing I really love about this rivalry, right? Like, the stakes are so high for a G5 matchup. Like, how many coaches have gotten fired because they lost a game in this series, right? Capone's just the most recent example, but, I think Latrell's firing, losing the championship game to UTSA was a huge part of that. So,
Texas.
it's cool to see a game that means so much to both programs and such a big measuring stick. And, you hate to see people lose their work, their livelihoods and their job and all that, but just goes to show how important this series is for both teams.
It's very, very serious, but he didn't get fired solely off of the UTSA. UTSA is that final nail in the coffin, similar to what happened with Seth Luttrell. But UNT's defense, 35, nearly 36 points per game allowed, which was good for 11th in the American Athletic Conference. 458 yards per game allowed, which is good for tied dead last in the American Athletic Conference with none other than Tulsa. He's the highest paid assistant coach, getting literally the absolute worst conference averages as a result. Yeah, dude, it just, that's been the weak link for UNT this year. It's just that defense, man. Because if their defense holds on a little bit stronger, I mean, they probably win a few of those games that got away from them, and
Sure.
they're probably in the upper echelon of the conference right now. But those are brutal.
It's definitely not the problem for them. That's for sure.
No, definitely not. Definitely not. And it is no longer the problem for the Roadrunners, Jared, as UTSA's offense is just executing to a completely different degree right now than they had been all season long. And it was a coming out party, one that will be remembered for many, many years for Roadrunners fans, for Mr. David Amador II. Wow, incredible stuff. 9 catches, 122 yards, leading the day, 13.5 yards per reception with a touchdown where he turned the burners on for 51 yards. This was a catch and sprint and burn everybody in your path on the way to the end zone. He essentially goes untouched on the play. And when he initially makes that catch, there's probably 2 or 3 UNT defenders in front of him that just do not have the closing speed to cover David Amador as he streaks downfield. Man,
that was a great play call by Justin Burke as well. Like, UNT threw full blitz at the UTSA offensive line, and then there goes David on the middle screen. Like, you couldn't dream up a better mismatch than that, right? Great block from Ben Rios to get out there and get that. I think it was the safety, the linebacker. It had to be a safety. They blitzed all the linebackers, right? So to get out to that third level and get that block was huge. It was awesome to see. But David's other screen that he caught, I think it was like an 18-yard gain. That one was even more impressive because he caught the ball like pretty much at the line of scrimmage, and there were like 3 guys around him. I mean, I think any other player in this roster would have been lucky to get 4 yards on that play. And David just like weaves his way through traffic. He runs over some people and got 18 yards just out of nothing, right? And his instant offense he can bring every time he touches the ball because he's such a like electric player. It's been so sorely missed for UTSA, and it's a bummer to hear Coach Traylor say that they designed this offense expecting David to be this kind of player week in and week out, and then he's been able to play so little with his hamstring injury. He's going to redshirt this year, so you're getting like a free year of Amador, which is awesome. In this game, his 122 yards surpassed his total yardage last season. So could have been a massive season for him, but pretty confident he'll be back next year, and we'll have a better offense around him as well to help him.
Jared, in the preseason we were doing our position previews. You had a question that was like the best person at the position and the X factor at the position, and David Amador is that X factor at the position who brings the playmaker abilities, the game changing abilities with those big plays, right? And it's been missing, and it was very, very telling whenever Jeff Traylor made that comment, because you saw him in full force and you just saw how much better the offense was able to gel, and he's a consistent target throughout the game, and you see sort of the momentum snowball off the back of David Amador's production. And it's like, when what you just highlighted in his 18-yard screen and then the 51-yard dash downfield is an excellent example of his speed and his vision as a ball carrier. But how about just the raw, nasty hands and catching ability of David Amador with 2 sideline tiptoes, which were legal catches in the NFL, 2 feet down. It happened twice. I mean, this guy is stretching out of bounds, bobbling the ball, maintains possession, knows exactly where his big toe is, and he's straddling that sideline. Just an absolute beautiful thing to watch him go up and catch the ball. He knows exactly where he is, where the ball is, where his hands need to be, where his feet need to be. He did it twice, Jared. I mean, those 2 catches were unbelievable to watch. And for a sophomore to make those plays in what's essentially like his first real full game at healthy, playing ability, because in Memphis he only had one catch and he didn't get too many snaps in that game. I think
he was clearly limited. Yeah.
Jeff Traylor even made a comment that he was only at 70 or 80% still.
Mm-hmm.
And then he gets a bye week and you see him now, I guess he's probably closer to 85, 90%. Golly, those catches were just beautiful to see, man. But he has a different level of talent that we're missing. We're missing at that wide receiver position right now.
And it's not just his play as a receiver either. I mean, he's so good on those gadget plays, right? The jet sweeps, the wide receiver passes, the screen plays. I mean, all that kind of stuff. I think they did a wildcat play with him, I believe, as well. So he's a game planning nightmare for opposing defenses, and they're just starting to scratch the surface of what they could do with him as well, right? So if Devin McEwen was out there, oh man, this offense would be so fun to watch. But it's cool to see at least a little bit of what the vision was for this offense heading into the season with those two young receivers. Now we just need both guys healthy at the same time, and hopefully that comes this week or against Army. But I think most likely we probably won't see that until the bowl game, assuming UTSA can take care of business this week. Between
David Amador and the production of the 3 tied end fleet that UTSA has, which the 3 tight ends and Patrick Overmeyer, Dan Dishman, and Houston Thomas combined for 11 catches, 106 yards of offense. Yeah, unbelievable consistency from this group. They seem to always be open whenever Owen McCown needs somebody open. And they're so versatile. Each one of those guys brings something completely different to that tight end position. And even on the plays where they do catch the ball, they do it in so many different ways. You have Dan Dishman who can streak downfield. Houston Thomas kind of does a little bit of that too. They can go out and get the ball along the sideline or on a sort of a fade route even. And then you have both them and Patrick Overmeyer as well, able to just go over the middle of the field and catch those quick up routes, those out routes. And we saw those up and outs really, I think, is what helped UTSA get into an offensive momentum, utilizing those tight ends on just those quick out routes. Boom, boom, dumping it down. And then all of a sudden we opened up that big playmaking ability. It was a thing of art, man, a thing of art to see the synchronicity of the receiving cores and Owen McCown start to gel with one another. But the reps are there. They have finally got the reps to where they're trusting each other. They sort of know where they're going to be before they get there. They know where the ball is going to be before it gets there. And they're communicating a higher level now, right? That the telekinesis is occurring between quarterback and his receivers. And we got spoiled as fans watching that with Frank Harris and the guys that he had been throwing the ball to for 4 years. These guys are actually starting to have that now after 10 games with each other. It's pretty incredible.
A great example of that was Dan Dishman's touchdown catch. I'm pretty sure Dan was not open. I don't even think he was out of his break when Owen threw that ball. I mean, the first check was Overmeyer was lined up as an H-back, went in motion, and then, did like a flare out, I guess. And UNT's defense pretty much had that covered. They brought the blitz as well. So Owen steps up in the pocket and just kind of does a flick, going to Dishman, right? Knowing that he was going to break into the middle of the end zone and just reading how I don't know if it's a linebacker or safety, whoever was on Dishman, the way that they were lined up, there was no way that defender could have turned around and contested that throw. And Owen just trusted Dan to go up and get it, trusted him to get open, and easy touchdown. When you watch a replay or when you see it for the first time, you're oh, the tight end was open in the middle of the end zone. That's not what Owen saw, right? When he let go of the ball, right? He had to be thinking ahead of what was going to happen after he threw the ball for that play to be successful. Just really, really veteran stuff. It's great.
Oh, man, dude. It's incredible to watch that and see the potential of this group playing as upperclassmen together. Jared,
yeah, I mean, especially with some more transfer portal additions. Good. That offense could go really nasty. And I think recruits are going to want to go play in this system. You show them tape from the last couple of weeks. Yeah, tantalizing.
I think so. And, Jeff Traylor had kind of told us all year long, look, this is just an inexperience issue. This team is going to be good. We just don't know when, but we will be good. And right, trust the process. They have gotten the experience together, and you're starting to see what was an inexperienced team now all of a sudden finally in sync with one another, knowing how to play together. Jared, this was the very first 300-yard rushing game of the season for UTSA, 302 total yards rushing off of 88 yards from Owen McCown and 168 yards from Robert Henry. That includes an 83-yard touchdown run with about 3 minutes left in the football game. Okay, so Owen McCown scrambles for 88. Robert Henry gets 83 on one trash time touchdown. How good was the running game actually
It's
against
misleading.
UNT? It feels inflated, doesn't it? Because watching it, it didn't feel like we were running the ball very well at all.
Look, the way the team has run the ball this year, like, we'll take it, right? I don't want to rain too much on the parade of the best running performance, of the season. But the running game is not fixed, right? Like, there was still like no push from the offensive line. There were not many holes to run through. Even Robert Henry's long run, like, total missed assignment by UNT's defense, right? Linebacker just ran himself out of the play, left it wide open, right? There was no one at the second or third level on that play from the UNT defense, right? So certainly happy with the performance, right? But there's still a lot of work to be done there. And I agree with you. I don't want to be too much of a Debbie Downer, but the run game is still really rough, right? And I don't know. It's past the point where it can really get fixed this season. I think it's just like, what can we do next year better, right? Obviously, getting the offensive line healthy is huge. I don't know what's going on with Kavorian, but getting Brendan High healthy will be huge. But yeah, it's
another rough day for Kavorian
Barnes.
Another rough day for Kavorian Barnes, man. 10 carries, 16 yards, only 1.5 yards per carry. You gotta figure that those carries are probably better suited going to another back at this point.
Yeah, Bryson Donnell had some good touches.
Right, and continue just getting those guys the snaps that they need to have to develop. Right, I mean, let's not continue wasting those carries. There's a sequence there, Jared, which I think is one of the most impressive sequences I've ever seen from the Roadrunners. UTSA is up 7-0. The Alamodome is a little bit quiet, and we start to get a little bit amped up there in our club section, and we decide it's time to start banging the sign as UNT starts making their way downfield. If you're watching on YouTube, you can see this nasty forearm bruise. That's sign banging, baby. And we start banging that sign. There starts getting some noise in the Alamodome, and lower bowl starts getting loud. UNT's driving downfield. UTSA goes on this 4-play run where they intercept Chandler Morris. They have a two-play touchdown drive, and that is the one to David Amador for the 51 yards. And then we get an onside kick recovery after that touchdown, up 14-0. We go and get an onside kick recovery. All three phases of the game, complete dominance in this 4-play sequence. But what it really did was suck the life out of UNT. There's a moment there after the interception where UTSA's defense actually runs over to the corner tunnel above our section and points at the sign bangers. They're juiced up. We're juiced up. You look over at UNT after David Amador scores that touchdown and then the ensuing onside kick, and there's a little bit of head hanging going on there. There's a little bit like kicking themselves, and you like that evil, oh, here we go. We're going to blow it. We're going to fold again. It starts creeping into the mind of this mean green team that cannot get a win in the Alamodome, that cannot get a win over UTSA. And for Jeff Traylor to come out and pull some sicko action with an onside kick up 14-0 in the first half, that's only done in rivalry games. And you do it for the sole purpose of extinguishing your rival's flame. And I think it happened, man. I think there was a moment there where they really got into their heads and folded. They never recovered from that 4-play sequence, Jared. They made it a little bit interesting, but UNT was never really in the game after that.
I really like that 4-play series that you highlight too, because each and every one of those plays is another data point about how severely North Texas got outcoached and outschemed by UTSA staff. Right? Let's start with the interception. UTSA comes into this game with the tendency of blitzing a lot, playing a lot of man-free, one high, sometimes two high safety looks. Pretty good amount of man coverage, right? They leave the cornerbacks on the islands. They're not afraid of that. Completely different script against North Texas. They sent 3 rushers most of the game, sometimes 4, and they were comfortable with that. They dropped 8 into coverage all the time. Chandler Morris panicked. He wasn't ready for it. He forced a lot of throws, including that throw that Zay Frazier picked off in that example, right? So that's one. The screenplay to Amador, just, the rock, paper, scissors of calling a play while the defense is calling play. Like they send a full-on blitz, UTSA sends a screen. Easy touchdown, right?
Yeah.
The onside kick, North Texas had put on film that they have a return man on their front wall that's like 15 yards off the line for whatever reason. UTSA sees that. They confirmed after the first touchdown that UNT was still doing it in this game. They get Sandell to kick the ball. Easy recovery, right? So it's like all those things add up. And they got outcoached, buddy. They got outcoached.
Schooled is a masterclass from UTSA staff as far as the chessboard goes, and to that degree, they didn't have to like. There was that game planning that was a little bit elaborate, but then there was also like what you say offensively, just sort of taking what they were giving you, and that's sort of what we saw on the David Amador. You didn't have to. You have to think up some elaborate scheme to do that. You just sort of picked what they were. Oh, they're going to blitz. All right, well, we just toss it down to David and let him take it. The rest of the
when
field's
your tight ends are always open, it makes it pretty easy to work those lower routes.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Just tough matchups, right? Like we talked on our instant reaction video, shot live on location from Hoosier Park with the Alamodome beautifully in the background. Oh, shout out to Aaron for helping us out with that. But just the size difference, right? Like you could really tell on the field how much bigger UTSA was. And I think UTSA's tight ends versus North Texas like secondary and linebackers was huge there. So, I can't remember who it was, but one of the players on UTSA's offense said that they were a little surprised at the start of the game because UNT was playing with 3 high safeties, which is not really what they prepared for in their game plan. But, Justin Burke put the team in the position to keep moving the ball, and they got 681 yards of offense, right? So another tip of the hat to UTSA's coaching staff, which, obviously we've been quite critical of this year. They've not always done a great job. There's been a lot of games where I felt UTSA got outcoached. So to see that change and to see the improvement, not only from the players, but from the staff as well, is very encouraging.
Big turnaround. The only coaching decision I think players can point to is going forward on 4th and 1 after that onside kick where you're pretty close to a chip-in field goal and you can go up 3 possessions, 17-0. Instead, you don't get that 4th and 1, which is fine. I get it. It's a rivalry game. You want to be aggressive. You already kicked the onside kick. But, man, get your points off the onside kick. Make it a 3-possession game. You don't get it.
I think that was the play that Traylor said that he overrode the play call from Burke.
That's right. And he openly admitted that in the post-game presser that he overrode Justin Burke's play call to kick the field goal. Jeff Traylor said, hell no, we're sticking it to these dang mean green.
Twice this year we've gotten on this podcast and we said that sometimes UTSA calls plays like trying to prove that they can be a team that they're not this year. I think that was another example where they lined up in shotgun on 4th and 1. They hand the ball to Kavorian to get that 1 yard and he just gets blown up.
Ridiculous. If you're going to do it, just do the dang quarterback sneak and just get the dang yardage. Don't hand it off 3 yards behind the line of scrimmage on a 4th and 1. You're turning 1 yard into 5 when you do that. I also feel like it's rivalry juice that contributed to that play call too, Jared.
Sure.
You're feeling yourself. You want to stick it to them. And so you kind of overlook the sound decision in that regard. And instead of going up 17-0, making a 3-possession game, it is immediately a 10-point swing. UNT scores on the very first play after that 4th down turnover. Shane Porter did 79 yards to the house untouched. and now it's 14-7, and UTSA fans like, you got to be kidding. So that happens.
Well,
Other than that,
probably a good point
yeah.
to start diving into the defense a little bit more.
Absolutely. So you talked a lot about the different sort of packages that UTSA brought up. This was a very different looking defense schematically than what we had seen through the first 9 games.
Yeah, definitely. Just a lot of coverage out there. I noticed as well they did a lot of, I don't know if you would call it a nickel or a dime package compared to UTSA's base defense because they have that hybrid role. But they were putting like Ty and Milton on the field a lot more, like alongside Danye and the safeties, right? To kind of like get a linebacker off the field and bring in another defensive back. That strategy worked very, very well for UTSA. I think a big reason that worked well is because the 3 guys that they would send to rush were, they weren't necessarily getting like pressures per se on Chandler Morris. They definitely weren't getting sacks, but they were at least forcing him to speed things up, right? To step up in the pocket, to throw off platform and stuff like that, right? So it's not like they were like rocking his world, but he couldn't just sit back there all day and wait for guys to get open. You know what I'm saying? Like he had to get the ball out. So that's huge, right? And I said that a lot. Like I think too often when you analyze football, people look at the sack numbers, but a sack to me says more about the quarterback than it does about the pressure that the defensive front is generating, right? So I think the UTSA's defensive front, for what the play calls were, did a pretty good job of winning some of those one-on-ones. And, I think with a less veteran quarterback, you probably would have seen more sacks even with that limited number of rush. I think in particular, Cyrus Simon had a really great game. Again, not getting a lot of sacks, but winning his battles, right? Pushing the lineman back, collapsing that pocket, being aware. I think he tipped a pass in line of scrimmage, I believe. He made some plays against the run as well, so I thought he had a really, really strong game.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And you got to highlight the man of the day, man, Zay Frazier, right? We talked about him a little bit, but 2 picks on the day, 4 tackles on the day, 1 tackle for loss. He got his hands in there for 3 passes deflected, broken up. I mean, he's just all over the field against UNT. Zay Frazier with just a monster, absolutely monster game.
Why do they keep throwing at him, dude?
Yeah, that's a good question.
I was just laughing. It's not like it was the third option, right? And like the other routes weren't there, and then they had to check down to whoever Zay was guarding. I mean, they were going to him one-on-one intentionally as like the first read. I was like, this guy's kicking your ass, man. Why are you trying to continue to pick on him? I thought that was really weird. Obviously, it worked out well for UTSA, but if I was a North Texas fan, I would have been like, what in the world are we doing? This guy's a stud, man. He's looking like an NFL corner out there, and they're trying to like pick on him. It's really weird.
It's very, very strange that they would continue throwing at this guy. Let's talk about UTSA cornerback Zay Frazier. Here's some fantastic stats from Paisano Sports. Shout out. 83.1 overall defensive grade from Pro Football Focus. Behind 19 tackles, he is the number one rated defensive back in the AAC with a 33.9 passer rating. He's only allowed 1 single touchdown in 377 snaps. His 4 interceptions are tied for number 1 in the AAC, and 5 passes broken up. Just nasty stuff. And it's every single week. It's week in and week out with Zay Frazier, man. He's unbelievable. It's unbelievable.
I think that he has another year of eligibility if he wants to use it. I think he's gone, man. I think he's going to get paid.
Be mad at him,
man.
Can't be mad at him.
Mm-mm.
Can't be mad at him. Yeah. He's probably as good as gone, Jared, but you're going to get the most out of him
and that might be the NFL, not like go chasing an NIL bag, right? I mean,
why not? Yeah,
I think he's played well enough that he could go either route, right? Depending on what's more lucrative and what's more available.
With potentially 3 games remaining, he could do wondrous things for his draft stock this season. If that's available, why wait? Go and get it. Go and get the contract.
Yeah. So huge game for him. It's awesome.
Tremendous, and just secondary altogether, right? Which we talk about, and schematically is a big reason why for that. But great day from UTSA's defensive backs.
Yeah, Jamarius Lewis continues to step up big time. Got not only thrust into a starting role recently, but also changed positions, right? He had been the boundary safety or the strong safety for most of the year as a backup. And then when Ken Robinson went down, he made the switch to field safety. So he has to do, more of the field to cover, more running to do. And he's been great, man. Another great game. Made some great plays against the run as well. So it's been awesome to see that depth really shine through, right? It's been, I wouldn't say like zero drop off after Robinson's injury, but not as much as we certainly feared would be the case when he went down.
It's a complete shutdown of the number 3 wide receiver in the American Athletic Conference, DT Sheffield, who's averaging 74 yards per game, had 10 touchdowns on the season. He gets held to 13 total yards on just 3 catches for the day. Completely blanketed him. Took him out.
What's that that seatbelt celebration they do?
Is
that what it is?
Yes.
Lock that boy down, man.
Lock
Made him
that
look
boy
like he
down.
was nothing.
It's a non-factor.
3 catches for 13 yards. He had a carry, I think, on a jet sweep. He got 2 yards on it.
Correct. Yep.
Incredible stuff.
Yeah, man. Unbelievable stuff. Yeah, and that's part of the game plan. Jeff Traylor essentially said, we'll allow all your other receivers to be open and do everything they can. As long as this guy can't do anything, we're going to be just fine. And that ended up proving true. They eliminated DT Sheffield, and the rest of UNT's receiving core just was not enough to get the output that they needed.
Now, those schematic changes that we mentioned to take away a lot of those routes for North Texas and to play more coverage did leave some opportunities for the Mean Green and their running attack. Shane Porter for North Texas ran for 193 yards and 3 touchdowns. I think most of that was just schematic, right? Like UTSA didn't have a very heavy box, right? Either they only had one linebacker there at all, or they had 2 linebackers, but one of them was actually a defensive back, just different combination of things. I think on a couple of plays too, just unlucky play call for UTSA. So, I'm not concerned that we're seeing like a regression in the run defense or anything like that. It just, when a team shows you what they want to do on offense, you got to do all you can to take away their number one thing. And for this game, it was making sure that Chandler Morris couldn't hit DT Sheffield, right? And they did just that. Left some opportunities for the running backs to, have a better game than typically would. So
Shane Porter was disgusting, man. Shane Porter had 15 yards per carry, 193 yards on 13 carries. Yeah, he was nasty.
Yeah. He was converted wide receiver, man. They did an awesome job, identifying that talent and converting him to running back.
Had a hat trick with 3 touchdowns on the day. I mean, yeah, but again, it wasn't enough. It wasn't enough. And I think UTSA, again, was fine with Shane Porter having a day and with the rest of the receiving core having a day, as long as DT Sheffield and Chandler Morris did not.
Sure.
And they did a great job of moving the ball downfield. They just couldn't really get their points out of their drives. But, I mean, look, 480 total yards from UNT, and they were moving the chains at 20 first downs. And a lot of times those first downs were coming on open receivers. Like, it seemed like easy gains, easy passes and completions. But then whenever push came to shove and they crossed midfield and they got closer into the red zone, they weren't able to put those points up on the board. UTSA's defense was able to clamp down when they needed to.
I think just like you said with Traylor, that the rivalry influences some of your decisions, some of your play callings. I think there were like 2 different plays where, ESPN had their little analytics thing that said like, kick it or go for it. And the analytics said to kick it, and North Texas went for it and got stuffed.
Yeah. Yeah. 1 for 5
they probably had,
on 4th down.
They probably had 3 or 4 possessions that they were in field goal range and didn't take the points. Or
1 for 5
attempt to take the points.
No, didn't even attempt it. Yeah. 1 for 5 on 4th down, 2 for 11 on 3rd down. You talk about getting into your own head, Jared. You're totally right. You're getting into your own head. Yeah.
Hey, I'm gonna jump off of our order of topics here because it's a good segue. Have you seen through 2 years? Have you seen anything from Eric Morris that makes you think he's an upgrade over Seth Luttrell?
No.
Were you more scared of Seth Luttrell's teams than Eric Morris's teams?
Totally. Absolutely. Absolutely. Seth Luttrell was a hell of a ball coach, and it also seemed like he had this commanding presence. And I don't think that UNT under Seth Luttrell lays down the way that they did
I think they're tougher
on Friday.
Yeah,
They were tougher.
I
They were
think
a hell of a lot tougher. Mentally tougher. They had more fortitude, more resolve. I think if UNT goes down 14-0, 14-7 against this team, I mean, Friday turns into a bloodbath under Seth Luttrell. I mean, it's back and forth. It's nasty, and you got to pull it out in the last minute. But there was a point, like I said earlier, where it seemed like UNT sort of laid down in that game.
Yeah,
I don't think that happens under Seth.
Yeah, I'm not to the point yet where I'm going to say like it was a mistake to fire Luttrell and go with Morris. I don't think. But I mean, I think Morris is a better recruiter than Luttrell, but like it didn't always feel like it. You know, like the guy, they just look so small. I don't know if that's like a strength and conditioning thing or what. They haven't had the run game that Luttrell's had either, which is probably just schematic choice, right? To do the air raid. So yeah, I don't know.
And they weren't as fast as UTSA. They weren't as big, but they weren't as fast as UTSA either. I mean, we talk about David Amador dusting a few UNT defensive backs on his 51-yard touchdown. And then there were a couple of times where UTSA's defensive backs had the closing speed to bring down UNT's ball carriers. Even on that 79-yard run from Shane Porter, we didn't give up. We still tackled him at the goal line as he went into the touchdown, and we closed a lot of distance in there. So there was a clear, I think, difference in talent. But as far as coaching,
it's funny. I was going to say maybe it's like a youth thing. Yeah, for sure. Like it may be a youth thing because like the North Texas secondary is super young, but it was a freshman for UTSA that caught up with Shane Porter on the touchdown run that you're referring to, right? So
that's right.
I don't even know if you can say that.
Yeah.
I
don't know, it feels like a lateral move at best, going over to. Yeah. And Luttrell did great things for UT. I mean, he's unfairly ousted, maybe so. I mean, you could argue that he reached his ceiling, but his ceiling was pretty dang high. So yeah, I don't know. And part of me did enjoy Seth Luttrell as a head coach for UT. I was a Seth Luttrell fan. I think I could say that. I think in retrospect, I could say I am a fan of Seth Luttrell as a head coach. Kills me to say it, but sure. It's true.
Well, he's on the market, and there's a lot of jobs open too.
Well,
it would be pretty interesting to see him pop up at Rice or something.
To segue over to our head coach, Jeff Traylor was really talking his mess. We talked about how he was calling out people who were calling out his offensive coordinator, Justin Burke. And then he went and he called out reporters for questioning his culture, questioning our culture. And look, UTSA still committed 8 penalties for 89 yards. They still have single-digit guys committing egregious personal fouls, the same guys. And in fact, Jared, we have a single-digit guy giving double birds to the UNT sideline, literally running over to their sideline just to flick them off with 2 hands. This is a single-digit guy. Traylor, we're still questioning the culture, buddy. Just because we got the execution right on offense doesn't mean the culture's fixed. The discipline is not there. It's still not there, bro. We're just masking it better.
Right. No, I think you're right. Yeah.
So, gotta talk that.
Last thing I want to point out, Tate Sandell had an awesome game, dude. What a season he's had. American Athletic Conference Special Teams Player of the Week.
That's right.
Not a perfect kick on his onside kick. I think he probably hit it a little bit harder than he would want to. But still, gave his guys the opportunity to go make a play on the ball. I think Caleb Brown had that recovery. Was great kicking, from his place kicks as well. He's had a great season, man. It's been awesome.
4 field goals from 44, 42, 34, and 28 yards out. He has also set a school record for 48 touchbacks on the season, and there are still 2 games left in the regular season. It's fantastic stuff from Tate Sandell, who just takes over the position in October and has been unbelievably filthy kicking the ball as a place kicker, and would have even better stats if he wasn't iced by his own coach a couple of times this season. So, dude, just tremendous stuff from Tate Sandell. Dude, he's kicking the ball incredibly. That has to be recognized. Owen McCown got honorable mention for offensive player of the week for the AAC, and he was chosen as, for other accolades, Manning Award Stars of the Week and Davey O'Brien Award of the Week. So yeah, again, Owen McCown getting his recognition. Tate Sandell, an absolute stud. And how about this, Jared? The Roadrunners, 9 straight home wins, with a win over Temple on Friday that will tie the program record of 10 straight home wins. They are 28-3 at home under Jeff Traylor, 15-2 in the month of November. 15-2. After the win over Memphis, Jeff Traylor says, we're going to make this a November to remember. They have a knack for turning it on whenever they need to. 15-2 is just filthy. One of those being the loss to Tulane last year in the conference championship play-in game. And then one being in Denton, Texas, the last time that UNT beat us and soiled our perfect undefeated record. Other than that, Jared, 15-2 in the mark of 15-2 in the month of November. It's just filthy. And 28-3 at home. Golly, man, like, you'd be crazy to not be coming to the Alamodome to watch these Roadrunners, man. They don't lose. They don't lose in San Antonio. They don't.
Yeah, that's awesome. I will point out those 2 losses are both final games of the regular season. So something to keep in mind for Army next week. Once we get there, not to look ahead.
Oh. You know what is also a cool little storyline is UTSA improves to 500 across the board, 5-5 overall, 3-3 in the American Athletic Conference. But they knock UNT down to 5-5 overall. They had a winning record. Now they're at 500. And even better, they have a losing record in conference after losing to UTSA, 2-4 in the AAC for the Mean Green. So yet again, UTSA ahead of UNT on the rankings in the standings after we beat them. Gosh, it just feels so good to rub their nose in the dirt. It's fantastic.
So, Adrian, UTSA made it 2 weeks in a row wearing the black jerseys on ESPN broadcast. Do you think they're gonna pull it out for another Friday Night Lights showing on ESPN2?
You'd be crazy not to. We talked about this on the Immediate Reaction podcast, and although I do feel it has gotten corny to extend a 1-week alternate jersey into what could be 3 games in a row, that does feel corny, but they're working. It's winning. But the main argument for me is the value of the jerseys when they go to auction. If these are the jerseys that turned around UTSA's 2024 football program from a losing record to a 500 record and then to a bowl-eligible, bowl invite record, they do it all in the black in the black unis, the Permian Basin unis. Yeah, now all of a sudden the collector's item, the value of that jersey is worth a hell of a lot more. People are paying more for them at auction. So I'm fine with it. I feel it's corny, but I'm okay with it. It's working, and you see, I'm wearing it. I'm wearing the black getup, and I will continue to wear it as long as we keep winning in our black jerseys. You can't do it on the road, but if we want to do one more Friday Night Lights game in it, I guess it's all right. I'm okay with it. Jared, I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I'm with you too. I'll add to that though. Like, let's say UTSA wears them again against Temple. They beat Temple. They get bowl eligible in ESPN2 on primetime Friday night game. You know, sometimes like a jersey is associated with a single player, like in our collective memories as sports fans, right? Like right now, I can think of like an old Pittsburgh Pirates uniform, and I think of Barry Bonds when Barry Bonds played for the Pirates, right?
Wow.
I think you see where I'm going with this.
Keep going.
If UTSA pulls it off, they turn the season around, that Blackbird jersey will always be the Owen McCown jersey to me, personally.
Well, because the Blackbirds from back in the day are forever associated with Josiah Tauefa. When you
right?
see that black birds with the orange numbers, that's Josiah's jersey, bro.
Yeah, you think of
You
him
know,
hurdling the North Texas center and sacking Mason Fine. Yeah, 100%.
100%, 100%. And yeah, it would be forever associated with Owen. It would be pretty cool. I also think it's incredible. Here's a really cool thing that I don't know if has been said yet, but who was the one that advocated and forced the hand of the black jerseys for Jeff Traylor and for UTSA? J.T. Clark. This guy on the sideline, injured, still getting W's for UTSA. Despite not being able to get on the field, he is contributing in so many ways. So JT Clark, man, shout out to my boy, dude. The other thing about it is, would you like to see the blackout? And I know, UTSA doesn't necessarily have a hand at deciding this or not, but as a fan, would you like to see this be an annual thing, one game a year, pulling out the black jerseys rather than, every several years? Should it be a thing where there's a blackout game every single year on UTSA schedule?
I guess I don't mind. I don't think we're to the point yet, like as a fan base, that we could pull off like an annual blackout game. A little skeptical of that. Did
What
a
do you
pretty
mean
good
by
job
that?
with it this year. Yeah.
What do you mean by
Well,
like
I mean,
as a fan base?
like to coordinate it, right? That everyone like shows up and like has the gear to wear, because you're gonna want to
Right.
do a blue out and an orange out, probably a white out too. So I don't know, stretching that to an annual blackout seems like a bit much for me.
I get it.
I don't
I
hate
get
the
it.
idea, but it probably depends on like budget too, because like so the jersey you got to buy and maintain and all that, right? So
It's
I don't know.
that
I
auction
don't
money,
hate it.
baby.
I don't hate it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I
I
mean, if you're
think
doing it annually,
not,
you're not going to auction it off though,
I suppose
because
so.
you're
It's
not
got to
going
be
to
the
get a new
same
one
one
every
year and then
year.
you're out.
Yeah.
Yeah. And for me, and you can't overdo like the color coordinated games. Like you give me an orange out in September and you
Mm-hmm.
give me a lights out in November, and that's
Yeah.
it. But yeah, and the only way for us as a fan base to accumulate more black gear is to continue putting that game on the schedule and have outlets like the Alamodome fan shop open up our selection and offer some black merch, and the UTSA bookstore and academy to offer some more black merch. But they're fun, they're working, players like them, fans like them. I did get some comments from Alamodome staff members. Why the heck are they wearing black? Black's not even school color. I thought that was funny.
Yeah, I get
It's a
that.
thing.
Honestly,
I
I
get it.
get it.
For
Yeah.
casual fan, it's kind of weird, because
Mhm.
they don't do that in the pros. They don't do that necessarily at every school. And yeah, so I get it. But they're working. I like it. Blackout
Yep.
jerseys, lights out jerseys. Could that be the reason why UTSA turned it around? It's part of it. I think we can argue it's part of it.
All right, guys, we got a really good voicemail this week, so I'm gonna play that for you guys and we'll give our thoughts on it. Cut up for that right now.
Hey guys, Nate here. Always a good time to beat UNT. We played a pretty good game, offense, defense, special teams. So I don't really want to talk too much about that specifically, but I want to talk about the defensive coordinator and kind of had a question about what y'all thought or what y'all think about Jess Loepp. He's 5 years into his tenure. I think he's a very opportunistic defensive coach. He'll give up yards, he'll give up touchdowns, but he will force a turnover. And, what they say in football, whoever wins the turnover battle wins the game usually. And so, yeah, just wanted to know what y'all's thoughts are on him. And in a hypothetical situation, if a Power 4 team wanted to come poach Jess Loepp, would you want UTSA to put up the money to retain him, or would y'all want to start anew? Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Nate, for the awesome voicemail. Great stuff. It's a discussion I've had friends and at tailgates many times for sure. And it's kind of crazy too that Loepp has been here all 5 years compared to how much turnover there's been at the offensive coordinator position.
Yeah.
I'm curious to hear your thoughts first. I don't know if I've ever discussed this with you directly.
I don't think we have. Jess Loepp has been tremendous here at UTSA, but I also think that there's a reason why that power 4 position hasn't come calling yet. And I don't know that this defense has been necessarily like shut down in any one of those 5 seasons. In fact, in those earlier years under Jeff Traylor, it was far from shut down. It was offensive battles week in and week out through the first 3 seasons of the Jeff Traylor tenure. Jess Loepp is there. So I don't know. I mean, we're dominant in certain facets of the defense, but I don't know about just like overall a real shutdown defense dominance. I don't know about that. Opportunistic, I think, is a great way to describe Jess Loepp, and that's sort of what is reflected whenever you see those high scoring games from UTSA's opponents. But he's smart, I think, in his game planning. He's smart in his scheming, and he's able to identify weaknesses, and he's able to put, I think, guys in really good positions to succeed. He's done a good job of that. I don't think UTSA needs to shell out big bucks to retain any assistant coach. I don't think that
Like ever.
necessarily is a priority. Yeah, exactly. Ever. I don't think that's necessarily a priority. You trust your head coach to make that replacement, especially if it's a guy as well connected as Jeff Traylor is in this state. You've got to imagine he can go and reload and get someone just as good, if not better, if and when that time ever comes. But I don't know that Jess Loepp is a really hot commodity on the defensive coordinator market. Jared, I don't know that a lot of people are looking at Jess Loepp and saying, that's who we want. That's who we need. We need to get him here. I don't think so. If anything, it's a lateral move. It's another school like UTSA that feels that way about him. But I don't think that any Power 4 schools are.
I think
It's a risk versus reward.
My take on Leps, I think he's gotten a lot better as he's come along at UTSA, right? I think his safeties have improved a lot. They have an assistant safeties coach now, obviously, so that helps too. I think his game plan coming into games is usually pretty strong. I think he does a good job, just like we were talking about with North Texas, of taking away whatever the other opposing offense does best, right? And to me, like that's the number one key. If your opponent comes in excelling at something and they just continue to excel at it against you, and you're not taking away their number one thing, I have questions for sure. I do think that UTSA wins more with talent on defense than they do on scheme. And that's not to say that Loepp is not doing a good job with scheme, but we've got some dogs. We've had some dogs on that side of the ball. We've had great, amazing defensive lines, edge rushers, and I think that makes it a lot easier to win, right? I think his in-game adjustments are again have improved, but are still not as strong as I would want to see from a Power 4 coordinator. So I'm also a little bit skeptical that Power 4s would come calling for him, because there's still a lot to be concerned about with that defense. This has been the best defense he's had at UTSA, but they're still bottom of the country as far as allowing explosives, allowing big plays through the air, right? So I think he's great for UTSA. I've got no problems with him. I'm happy to keep him here for sure. Would be a little bit surprised if he got an SEC offer or something like that. But as far as replacing him goes, I mean, I think you got a lot of guys on the defensive staff that have earned the right to that promotion if that comes open, right?
Okay. So here's the discussion of internal promotions versus hiring from outside, which Jeff Traylor, I think, has gotten a lot of critique about, but it sounds like you're all for it in this case.
Well, because you got guys I think are super qualified, right? I think Coach Graham has been absolutely amazing as a cornerbacks coach. He's the highest paid cornerbacks coach in the group of 5, right? So, just as one example, I got no problem with him getting an internal promo to it. I think Coach Haynes is a future defensive coordinator as well. As a super smart guy, and he's had incredible defensive lines at UTSA. Been here for a while. Those guys know the system. It's not something I lose sleep over of like potentially leaving.
Yeah.
Yeah. But
Yeah.
great
Yeah, I would
voicemail,
agree.
great discussion.
I think both of those names are very valid for internal promotion, Jared. I would agree. Well, Jared, we have our third straight Alamodome ESPN2 broadcast this week. It is another Friday night kickoff, this time at 6 p.m. instead of 7, against the Temple Owls on ESPN2, where UTSA opens as a 16-point favorite to go to work on the 3-7 Owls and gain bowl eligibility with their 6th win of the year. I think there's going to be confetti falling in the Alamodome this Friday, Jared. I think so. I think it's going to happen.
Yep. We'll get into all that for sure. Very excited for this game. I agree with you, Adrian. Like, this is perfect timing for you to say first win streak of the season. What, might as well make it 3. It's been a long pod already, so I do want to take a quick pause for a Kumia break. But before we do want to give a big shout out to all our Patreon supporters that continue to support us. We continue to try to step up the coverage every way we can. Hope you guys are awesome. Post game instant reaction and beautiful 4K shot outside the Alamodome. So like that stuff like that, that we can do with your Patreon supports. Thank you all so much. Thank you to Digiteek, John Otwell, Gary and Ruben represent the UTSA Bird Game Tailgate, Ray Redding and Medium Apparel, Brandon Grill and the Grill Realty Group, Andy Elzada, Proficient Benefit Solutions, and special shout out to Andy. Got to hang out with him quite a bit at the game last Friday, so thank you so much. It was great meeting you. Had a great time. Shout out to Ian McClendon and Seeker LLC, Javon Townsend, president of the DFW chapter of the UTSA Alumni Association, Ryan Squares, Waterford Construction, UTSA Annual Giving, Artists and Vapor and CBD, and Wayne Gonzalez and the Runners Rising Project. So we'll cut over to a David Amador inspired Cumbia break. You can do your best number 18 impression, and we'll be back to preview the Temple Owls. All right, guys. Hope the hips are loose now after hitting your Amador impression.
That boy's got a nice step, dude. He's got some nice sauce on him, and I love the swagger that comes with the good play, dude. That's what some of this team needs, is a little bit of that. Yeah, dude. Temple Owls, man, rough, man. Look, this is the worst scoring offense in the American Athletic Conference. It's the worst yardage offense in the American Athletic Conference. I've really, really been struggling at 3-7, the Temple Owls, man, and golly, the problems that Temple was having, like it's all across the board, and they haven't gotten any better, like year over year. There hasn't been any improvement since the first time that we saw Temple was last year, which was at the beginning of the year last year. This is our first conference game in the AAC, I believe.
Yeah, I mean, there's not much to point to as far as an upward trajectory here. Not just, under Stan Drayton, but also predating that, just the program as a whole. It's in a pretty miserable spot. Stan Drayton got let go this week purely after an overtime win against FAU. Both coaches got fired after that game. Yeah, pretty nuts. Immediately after Stan Drayton's firing was announced, the Philadelphia Inquirer published a story again calling for the Temple football program to be shut down. It's like the second or third time I've read a story out of Philly saying just shut this thing down. And Philly's new school president actually was previously at a school that had abandoned football and praised that decision. So I guess it's not out of the realm of possibility. I think it's still super far-fetched for them to shut down football. But it just goes to show how bad the vibes are in Philly, where you have people close to the program saying that kind of stuff. It's incomprehensible how bad things have gotten over there.
It is, man. They're like, look, this, because the city of Philadelphia, because they play in the Eagles Stadium, right? Mm-hmm. And so the city's These guys are just in the way, man. Like we're giving them, they're taking up space down here. It's like, I don't know, but it's brutal. It's brutal for an Alice fan to have to sit there and watch this, man, and for them to not get any better. This is a program that's got like 150 years of football history.
Yeah.
Like it's ridiculous. We dove into
and,
it last year. Go find last year's Temple Pod. Talked
right.
about
Yeah,
it.
because
Like
I went to the game last year in Philadelphia, and like I was very surprised at like how many fans they have. Like it looks bad on TV because they play in this massive NFL stadium. They really have a
Right.
pretty strong fan base. Those fans care deeply about their athletics program, about their university. So I hope whoever they hire next can turn it around because things are bleak right now.
Generational support there, man. Yeah, it's
totally.
crazy.
Totally.
So,
where to start
here?
I guess we got to talk about Drayton getting fired a little bit more. Our old friend Everett Withers, former Texas State Bobcats head coach, takes over as the interim there.
Wow,
can't get away from that
so
guy.
Crazy.
It's like the third school. I think it's the third school that he's been at where
he plays the Roadrunners.
Yeah. It's like, geez, guy.
So
I don't know what Everett's record was against UTSA, but he never beat UTSA when he was at Texas State. I know that much.
Right.
I don't know if that was 0-2 or what.
Right. Yeah, look, Stan Drayton, I don't think he ever really had the support around him. I don't think very many people were like excited about his hiring. I don't think that a lot of people were confident in his ability to turn that program around. And it's unfair to him, but it just doesn't seem like he had much behind him to get this thing going. And he also inherited a real bad situation. I mean, but he certainly didn't improve it whatsoever either.
Yeah, chicken and the egg there for sure. He only won 9 games at Temple over 3 years. Never beat a winning team. I saw a blog post
Never won a
today
game on the road.
Yeah, all 9 wins at home. I saw a blog post that were like ranking Stan Drayton's 9 best wins at Temple. Like there are only 9 of them. It was so sad. The best one was when they beat Navy, but that was like Navy's worst team ever. That was Stan Drayton's best win at Temple. Yeah, it's just really rough.
Stan Drayton's 9 wins is one more than Tom Herman's 8 at FAU.
Brother, Tom Herman had 2 years. Stan Drayton had 3.
Oh my gosh, you're right. Oh, that's brutal.
Yeah,
they both go in there as eight overall wins.
Dude, I honestly was kind of sad because I rewatched the highlights of last week's game, and like there was so much emotion on the field, but like those guys, like maybe they knew they were going to get fired at the end of the year. I don't think either of them expected to get fired like the day after the game. And it's just like college football is a weird business, man.
It is, man, and it's but arguably even more shocking.
To talk a little bit more about the on-field situation, like the talent there at Temple, it's tough for sure. They got some players, don't get me wrong, but top to bottom, just don't have the depth, man. I think a lot of guys that are like FCS level talents. It's a big reason why they struggle to create explosive plays, especially in the run game. Man, they don't have a lot of physicality on that offensive line. I don't think they got some size, but they're not maulers, right? Yeah, man, and it's bleak.
And quarterback Evan Simon, he's not too bad.
He's not the problem. He's not the problem. I think if you put him in the right offense, he'd be okay.
Yeah, definitely so. He's a local Pennsylvania boy. He came over to Temple from Rutgers. And he's completing 61% of his passes. He's thrown over 1,500 yards on the season so far. 13 touchdowns to 6 interceptions. He just doesn't have much to work with around him, but Evan Simon seems to be pretty solid, I think.
Yeah, he's got a decent arm.
For lack of a better term. Yeah.
He's not much of an athlete, right? You throw the blitz at him, you're probably going to bring him down, right? His escapability is not great. But, I mean, if he had like North Texas as a receiving core to work with, like he'd probably put up some pretty good numbers, I think.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. I think so. Now, their running backs room has been arguably as poor as UTSA's in terms of production.
Yeah,
These
they
guys
got
haven't been able to run
Therese
the ball.
Worthy. Yeah, Therese Worthy's run pretty well for them, 6.5 yards per carry. Their other running back, though, he's having a Kavorian Barnes type season, where, with the advanced stats, they're better off not handing him the ball than handing him the ball. I think like Appleton. Oh, sorry, Antoine Littleton is their other
Antoine
back.
Littleton.
Yeah, not doing great. But I mean, those guys don't have anywhere to run, man. I mean, the blocking there is just not good. Really tough draw for them this week with UTSA having, one of the best run defenses in the country. So
They're also
they're going to be in a
splitting.
lot of third and longs for sure.
They're also splitting those carries up a lot because Therese Worthy, despite being the best running back production wise, he's not leading the team in carries.
Mm-hmm.
Six to seven attempts per game, whereas Littleton's getting 7 to 8 attempts per game, which they're not running the ball a whole lot in general. Evan Simon is the one who's scrambling the most for his life. But it's interesting that your number one ball carrier doesn't seem to be getting the lion's share of the snaps, but it kind of smells familiar too. Where have I seen that before, Jared?
True.
So yeah, it's that rushing game is kind of non-existent there for those guys.
Yep. So while they do have some speed at receiver, they do struggle to get those guys open. They do turn to their tight ends quite a bit. Just like UTSA, they'll do a lot of 12 personnel, a lot of kind of those pro style formations. You'll see them run. So keep an eye out for that. Like those tight ends, they're not big playmakers like how UTSA's tight ends have become. But they will work the ball to those guys to try to keep the sticks moving for sure.
Yeah, Dante Wright at wide receiver, senior wide receiver. He's their number one guy at the position. But is he injured, Jared? Is he the one? Did he get injured earlier this year?
Maybe
He's only
so.
played in 8 games. I don't know. But
They have quite a
utilize
few
tight
guys
ends.
that have kind of been in and out this season, especially on that offensive line. They've had a lot of shuffling there, just like UTSA's had.
Their big problem is up front, though. It's at the line of scrimmage, right?
Yeah.
They can't win the battle at the offensive line.
Yep,
And
for sure.
it's definitely the same on the defensive side of the ball too. They're just not good up front, and everything else just sort of dominoes behind that.
Yeah, and that's the tough thing about their defense because I think you could kind of see if they had a better defensive line that they could probably be a solid defense. I mean, I think their secondary is pretty solid. They do a good job of just keeping stuff in front of them. Of course, they've gotten burned, same as any team in America, right? They've given up a couple of long ones, but statistically, they're pretty good about not giving up those really long passes. They've got a safety, Andreas Keaton, who's been pretty good, and the 2 corners, Jamal Johnson and Torrey Richardson, that have had pretty good seasons as well. So UTSA is going to have plenty of opportunity through the air for sure. I don't expect them to shut down UTSA's explosive passing game by any means, but I think they'll make some plays, and they're not just going to lay over for this UTSA defense.
Yeah, sure. Anyone of note on Temple's defense?
Yeah, they've got a pass rusher who's really good. DeJuan Black, definitely one of the better pass rushers in this conference. He's got 29 quarterback pressures on the year, 16 quarterback hurries, and 5 sacks. So definitely a guy that you're going to want some tight end help, some running back help, and definitely just know where he's at, where he's lined up at. He's definitely the one to watch there. And they got some solid linebackers as well. DJ Woodbury is their leading tackler. He's really good at stopping the run. He's got a lot of stuffs at the line of scrimmage this year. So he's definitely their best guy as far as stopping the run goes. And then Taekwon King is another pretty well-rounded linebacker for them. Not a massive talent, but a solid player, I'd say. Their best player might be their kicker, brother. He nailed 2 50-plus yard field goals against FAU. He hit 4 total, hit the walk-off. He kind of got screwed out of that Player of the Week honor. I mean, Tate had a great game, but I don't think he did what Trujillo did, the kicker for Temple.
Yeah, Maddox Trujillo, 2 50-plus yarders and a walk-off winner. Pretty impressive stuff. Put the team on his back. He did indeed put the team on his back, Jared, and you got to give him his recognition for that. But also, Tate Sandell had how many PATs? Five PATs. So what? I think Trujillo only had to kick maybe 2 for Temple. So output wise, I think Sandell still had him beat, but yeah. The distance was there for.
Yeah. Well, that's pretty much it on Temple, man. It's just not a lot of positives to highlight. Nothing has come easy. Sorry, I bit my tongue. Ouch. Nothing has come easy for this team this year. Now, I will say, I mean, anytime you play a team that is coming off a coaching change, they're going to bring a certain energy to the game, right? Like they're going to have some fresh motivation, fresh outlook, right? It's pretty weird to be doing that and also be coming off of an overtime win against a conference opponent. That's pretty abnormal. That's just the world we live in now with early signing day and the transfer portal and all of that. So,
It's crazy.
I mean, I think you're going to see a good performance from Temple. I think they're going to be plucky, I guess I would say. But UTSA should have a pretty big talent advantage, and of course that home field advantage in the dome, as we know, is very real.
Lucky.
For me personally, I think the spread right now is at 18. I think that's like pretty much locked on to what I would set it at.
Okay, so you're going 18-point win for UTSA.
Yeah, I'll do UTSA 38, Temple 20.
Fantastic. Yeah, give me UTSA to beat the spread and have a tremendous senior day in the Alamodome. We're riding high. We've got all the juices. I think this team is focused. They're ready. Very, very clear-headed the way this UTSA team is operating right now. I have it as a really big win, Jared. I've got Temple with just 17 points, UTSA 43 on the day.
Nice. UTSA tends to play very well on senior day.
Yep, and at home in the dome. Let's get after it. Well, we would not be able to get after it on the Alamo Audible podcast if it was not for our Patreon subscribers. Big shout out to our big money donors. That is Ben Tovar, the Bunch family, Zach Espericueta, and the San Antonio Podcast Network, Alejandro Benavides, Dan Nerdall, our host of Around the Bird Bath, Jacob Cavazos, board president of the UTSA Alumni Association, John Nally, Rick Cortez of Rowdy Road Grillers, Sumner McDaniel, UTSA King Bowser, Maddie, and Home Field Apparel, where you can save 15% on your first order with the discount code UTSA Wants Home Field. That is 15% off with the discount code UTSA Wants Home Field. And we want you at our home field in the Alamodome to see UTSA get bowl eligible with their 6th win and send out the seniors in style in front of a jam-packed, loud crowd on ESPN2, baby. Let's go.